This episode of Capes and Lunatics is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. Get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
Are you heartfully sorry for all of your sins? It does not matter, dear friend, for now you face your just punishments.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again to Just Punishment. Punisher podcast that Mozz and I do with love and care. I am your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Welcome back to tonight's episode, Season 2, Episode 4, Scar Tissue. Rachel recalls the night everything changed and lets Frank in on the truth about her name. Russo sits down with a face from his childhood. Tonight's episodes: Ian B. MacDonald, Jerry Conroy, John Romita Sr., getting our Marvel Comics. Russ Andrew is there again. Russ Andrew may also be the guy who actually created Billy Russo, Jigsaw. I'm gonna have to look that up. I actually have the book that he was first introduced in. It was actually a hardcover graphic novel, which is weird because it almost looks like a Dr. Seuss book the way it's bound. It's like The Punisher. So, Steve Lightfoot, of course, gets our created by. Angela Lamanna gets our written by. And Angela Lamanna is doing twice the work because she's also still our executive story editor. And Ken Christensen took a day off. No longer our hardest working person in show business, just our regular story editor this week. Okay. This is a great episode. We get our hipster on the bus.
Well, I don't know if I'd call him a hipster. He seemed like a ne'er-do-well drug-dealing hobo or something.
He's not a hobo. That is some fancy outfits. I kind of felt there was meant to be kind of a slight dig on our other hipster hero, the Iron Fist, in his design.
Interesting. Yeah.
He definitely, he's got that little scruffy, blondish beard, clearly. To me, he is clearly the uncircumcised tip of gentrification.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, he is definitely someone who does not belong in this neighborhood and is there to cause problems and is so full of his own self-righteousness that we don't cry for him, Argentina. We do not cry for him. Although, again, highlights that basic question that I always ask: why are you picking a fight in the Marvel Universe? Especially, hey, this crazed hobo is a crazed hobo. I'm gonna pick on him because I can't imagine that ending poorly for me. It is literally such a low-cost thing to just let the crazed hobo be,
Right, especially someone with a face like that,
Yeah, well, it's like, clearly this is someone who... And then the crazed hobo gets off the bus, follows him, and of course the person, gets out his switchblade, because that's going to stop the crazed hobo.
It's like, have you seen my face? Do you think that's going to scare me?
Well, yeah, not for nothing. Yeah, exactly. Within this whole concept. And again, I do got to throw this out, my old Deadpool statement. Fantastic bone structure on Jigsaw. It's like...
Although, I will say, I thought his face was going to be far more disfigured.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's got really great bone structure. His face is not that... When you watch Deadpool and you see Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, even though he's got all the grape jelly on his face, he actually still looks a lot like Ryan Reynolds. And there's a real strong aspect of you go... You actually look pretty good, I mean, yeah, your skin's a little mottled, but, that's basically, you're a good-looking guy with acne, You're still actually objectively good-looking, even though you have acne, And that's where I feel with Billy Russo, which is why I kind of feel like Billy Russo has a lot more psychological stuff. I'm sure at some point we're going to get to see how he sees himself, and it's going to be like that last scene of the previous Punisher series, where he's like going through the glass and going through everything. I think that's going to be a little more intense about it. But I think right now, what we see is just a guy with some scars. Although it is weird that everyone seems to be reacting like, oh, yeah, you're not so pretty no more. It's like, no, he's actually still pretty pretty, you know? I remember in Oz, you know, there was a similar character. I think his name was Angel. I think his name was Angel. He was like, you know, this pretty guy, and then his son got sick, and he felt it was like, God punishing him for his hubris, so he like puts cuts on his face. But they were like cuts on his face, and he just, it's not like he cut his nose off. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you want to say someone's really messed up face, they don't have a nose. You know, that is like, oh, you lost if you still have your nose, you're still doing pretty good. You know, you still got lips and a nose. You're doing way better than most real burn victims that we see on the internet, you know, who are supposed to like and click because, you know, they sacrifice something. And no offense to those guys, but I mean, really, that's the thing. I think in this day and age, we've all seen real burn victims, and these guys don't quite get to that level. This is not a guy who had a grenade go off in his face. This is a guy who, you know, got a couple of cuts, you know, but it's all psychological because he also got shot in the head. So, you know, we'll give him that thing. But again, like I said, and again, they really emphasize that this is not someone we are supposed to care about.
Although, you see, like when he says to her at the end, you know, it's like deep down inside, I feel like I deserve the fear. So you kind of help it. Like, there was a lot of moments in this episode where I kept thinking, man, whatever he went through, he's not that guy anymore. And right now, the personality that's existing inside this body, inside these circumstances, I feel bad for. And maybe they should help him to get better. You know, he's never had anybody. And the thing he was really good at got taken away and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he made some bad choices, went down some bad roads, and made some horrendous choices, honestly. But, like, does he not deserve redemption when he's in that situation and feeling like maybe what I did was wrong and I just want to be able to be okay?
Well, you know what it is it's the reverse Jekyll Hyde.
Mm.
You know, you always think about Dr. Jekyll and being bound to this Mr. Hyde character who is pure id. But you never imagine what it would be like if you were a sociopath or a psychopath and suddenly woke up one morning with a conscience. And suddenly the weight of your crimes were on your back. And, you know, I mean, they sort of hint at this with Buffy and Angel and later Spike getting their souls back. But they all got over it real quick. You know, well, okay, yep, I cried in the basement for a month. I'm ready to go on with my life. But at the end of the day, I guess you have to go on with your life.
Right.
You know, but the fact of the matter is there's lots of people with perfectly good souls who are still sociopaths. But I've always thought it would be interesting to do the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story in reverse, where Mr. Hyde suddenly woke up suddenly had to deal with that he had a Mr. Jekyll that he had, or a Dr. Jekyll that he had to deal with. You know, this conscience eating at him and how that affects his standing as a professional sociopath. You know? A man respected in the sociopath community, the criminal community, suddenly getting a conscience and how devastating that might be.
It's kind of like Tony Soprano.
Yeah, or what they were trying to do in A Clockwork Orange, you know? Because that's essentially, you know, although they don't do that in A Clockwork Orange, they simply keep him from causing ill. But in its own way, what they're doing is they're replacing his consciousness with a physical ailment, which his sociopathic mind can respond to. The idea of someone suddenly getting a conscience and a sense of right and wrong is horrifying if you have lived your life in the wrong. And with Billy Russo, I think we have a deep idea here that he has, you know, he came to his pain rationally. You know, we're given this idea that this is a man who has been so hurt. His trauma has always been real. And his choices were not irrational choices. And what has happened, and this is actually the most interesting idea, it is this idea that he isn't a sociopath. He is a person who has made a reasoned choice based on his life. And because of that, once his emotional ties to his former pain are removed, his sociopathology is removed as well. Suddenly, he is just a person who is looking at his choices and unable to justify them because he no longer has the emotional tie to the trauma that caused him to make those choices.
Or the memory.
Well, yeah. Well, the memory is in many ways the emotional tie that because he still has some memories, which we see at the end, that once those memories are reawakened, because again, people don't know, don't push your luck in the Marvel universe, because it's like, again, that guy at the end is like, they really want us to not feel guilty for any of Russo's victims.
Right.
They really want us to say, trust us, these guys all had it coming. For a long time now.
At the same time, he makes an interesting point. The boys club director or whatever, he says, hey, don't blame me. Sometimes you got to take responsible for who you are inside. And maybe it's a bit of him that is that. Always would have been that.
That is the basic nurture question, and that is maybe even the deeper argument here, that as he pieces his jigsaw puzzle back together.
Right.
That so much of it is, this is just who he is. That brief moment away from that is just trying. It's I have my own theory on sociopathology, which is that some people come to sociopathology because they learn to mimic social norms without understanding the purpose of social norms. What you're supposed to develop in your youth is a sense of empathy.
Right.
The idea that I don't hurt people because it would make me feel bad if people hurt me and other people have the same feelings I do.
Right.
That's what's supposed to happen. And for most people, that is what happens. We don't want to see people in pain because it hurts us to see people in pain. If you don't have, however, and this is an interesting idea, if you only treat people well because of a fear of punishment, or because you know that the easier way to get through life is to treat people well, but you don't ever come to the point where you recognize another person as having feelings and emotions similar to your own, then that is sociopathology.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so really what you get in this idea is that, if you are a person who goes through life and you have been granted the opportunity to be free of conflict, you may well be a sociopath even though you never do anything wrong, simply because that's just the rules of life. And you obey the rules of life because there's no advantage to you in breaking those rules of life. If you ever watch a lot of Columbo episodes, that's a lot of the people that are the criminals on Columbo. They're people that have had privileged existences. And then when an opportunity comes along in which, maybe it would be quicker just to murder this guy, they don't even think twice about it because, we haven't tried killing him yet. Oh, I miss the 70s. By the way, back to this story. We always get off on these little tangents. Well, I get off on these little tangents.
Well, I think that's why we're here, because the shows ask us to ask ourselves deeper questions.
Well, yeah, and that's why these are good shows.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like the reason why these are good is because, we can talk about them.
Right.
There are shows you can't talk about, and they may be popular, but there's not really a lot to go into because it's funny or it's exciting or it's whatever. But if you don't walk away asking, well, now, what is the motivation of the Batman? What is the motivation of the Superman? And how does that justify our sense of what a hero is or what a villain is?
And what does that mean for me and how I should live my life? I feel like, not too many people really get their moral lessons from religion anymore. But the one thing where people do show up to the movie theater and watch these heroes that are just metaphors for our own problems, deal with questions that we all deal with, and then ask ourselves and each other what we think about these questions and how we think we should act. I think Marvel is doing a phenomenal job of doing that for our society.
Yeah, well, because it's myth. It's modern myth. That's what Joseph Campbell's whole point was. It's like, you know what? Here's the thing. There was a great item I remember reading in It was an analysis of pop culture I read in high school that I really loved, and it was talking about how jazz faded and rock became the dominant popular musical form. And essentially, jazz got into what they called the sit and listen to phase, where it was no longer about going out and hearing the music and dancing. It was about, no, man, you got to listen to this. This very structured. Basically, when jazz got to be something structured that you sat and listened to, it stopped being just a music of the people. And I think religion maybe sometimes finds itself in that place too, where the religion stops being something that is just in your life, informing your life, and becomes to ritualized, to structured, to really give you what you want. And in that place comes popular mythos. And whether it's Indiana Jones or Luke Skywalker or Captain Kirk or Jean-Luc Picard or Captain America or Superman, these things start to fill the gap because you want this thing that is in your life daily to give you moral guidance.
Right.
Not the thing you only go to on Sunday. So if you're only seeing this story on Sunday, it doesn't have as much weight to you as the thing that you see all week long, which is where superheroes are. Even if you're like me and you go to the comic book story every Wednesday religiously, I'm going to be reading my sacred scriptures all week long, and then I'm going to participate in this discussion group with my peers about the meanings of these great and noble creeds we've read. And that is how I inform my religious life in a very deep and spiritual way. Now, this isn't to say I'm not a practicing Catholic. I still am, as I always say. I am a practicing Catholic because I'm not very good at it. So I have to keep practicing. My wife and I, we watched Sunday Mass this morning on TV because although my son asked if we could go to Mass next week, and so we just might.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it's like I still have that tied to that deeper religious faith.
Tristan or Ben?
Tristan. Ben's almost 13. He's in his room on his phone.
Oh, gotcha. Right. He's a teenager now.
Yeah, Tristan still actually wants to participate with adults. We've got about 2-3 years of that left. And then I won't hear back from them until they're like 24. 24 is when you go, or 21 to 24 is when, Mark Twain once wrote, when he was 14, he felt his father was the greatest ignoramus he'd ever met in life. But by the time he turned 21, he was surprised at how much the old man had learned in 7 short years. Hey, that's why he's Mark Twain.
That's funny.
There's a reason why there's an actual comedy award named after the guy.
That's really funny.
Yeah, but that's the crux of the biscuit on that is, when we look at a guy like the Punisher, he is an archetypal character, and he tells us stuff about our own morals, both in the choices we make and the choices we don't make. Because at the end of the day, the choices that the Punisher makes are not necessarily good choices. They aren't necessarily choices that we should want to make or that we would make, but they are choices to be made. And as we're going through our lives, we can use a character like the Punisher to say, how does the actions of the Punisher inform our life? Because we can be a guy who fights, but maybe we don't kill,
right?
Like Batman, and hopefully none of us are killing because at the end of the day, like as we said last episode, the Punisher knows if you're using Punisher tactics, you're probably not a good guy,
right?
If you're someone that I have to fight and you're as good as me, I don't think you're a good guy. I don't think that you are a hero in this story. If you're just some Joe who's shooting up a place, you're clearly not concerned about what I'm concerned about. How we use that moral authority to guide our own selves. Along those same lines, in this episode, we do find out what Anne, I believe now we're calling her Anne's backstory is.
Amy.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Amy. Is it Amy Bendix? Is she saying her name?
Oh, I don't remember the last name. I just remember the
No, I'm just looking at IMDb, and they don't actually have a picture of her. It's some kind of, I don't know, it looks like an event photo. But yeah, there we go. Amy Bendix, Georgia Wigham is the actress. Yes, Amy Bendix, and essentially what we find out is that basically she was a street kid. She was recruited by essentially a Fagin of his day, to get the little, or actually it was a female lead, but
Fiona.
yeah, Fiona. Oh, Fiona Fagin.
Hmm.
Gets them together to be her little crew of.
Yeah, it's just like Yondu, because she was small and could fit in small places and steal things.
Exactly, and that is essentially but however, because they took pictures of the wrong people
Mm.
doing the wrong things, and she's like, it felt really icky when we were doing this,
Yeah.
because someone wanted to blackmail these people, and it's sort of like they're just like second level. They're basically henchmen contractors,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually kind of interesting because when we think about all the people that the Punisher just mowed down in the last season or the last episode, those are just henchmen contractors.
Mm-hmm.
None of them were like part of the grander, evil scheme. They're just like, 9 to 5. I was like, I guess our job is to do this now.
Right. No, but they were 9-to-5ers who picked up a gun. That puts you in
Well,
a different
those guys were
category
9 to 5.
immediately.
These are people who were 9 to 5ers who steal stuff. Which,
No,
but again,
not to steal stuff, but have no problem killing to do it.
No, I mean Amy's group versus the people that we killed last week.
Oh yeah. But I mean, like, I don't think there's any salvation in the fact that you picked up a gun for a dumb reason. That makes it maybe even worse.
Well, I guess the question is feeding your kids a dumb reason?
Well, these were kids, though. I don't think they had any kids.
Well, no. Amy is kids. Amy didn't pick up any guns, and Amy's friends didn't pick up any guns.
Aren't they when he shot them out in the car when they stopped him? They all had guns. That's why he shot. No.
Okay. So let's clear.
So those were Pilgrims guys, I guess. I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Okay. So yes. So Amy's story.
Fiona's.
Yeah, Amy's story is that her and her friends were all killed by Pilgrim's people. Okay, but Pilgrim, it's not like these are Pilgrim's elite hand-selected group. These are local thugs hired in the same way that Billy Russo hired, guys back from the war to go fight the war again, but, with fewer rules. That is the thing. But at the end of the day, they're both parts of the same ecosystem, which is this second-tier criminality. Ask your mom; those are for your mom. They're all part of the second-tier ecosystem of criminality,
right?
That is not part of any grand scheme, and that we're going to ally ourselves with Amy and not with the guys shooting people is kind of it's an arbitrary line, because really, at the end of the day, Amy was working for the Russian who we saw getting tortured at the start of this, who was the guy who wanted the photos. She's still just part of the same ecosystem. And if nothing else, maybe that's what Punisher finds himself in, is that he is sort of finding justice in the ecosystem of these second-tier criminals, that the world is so corrupt that it's like not even justice can find itself, but that, at least we can say, if you're picking up a gun, you made the But at the same time, these are people who picked up a gun to feed their families, but they didn't pick up the gun in the right way, because
it wasn't for your own reasons. You picked up a gun for someone else's reasons. That wasn't even a real reason.
No. What I'm saying is, so for example, the cops in the station, they're all people who picked up a gun to feed their families, but they're picking up a gun to feed their families in an authorized way. In the way that in Daredevil, Poindexter picked up a gun to provide for himself in an authorized way, and that was the structure. But when you pick up that gun because for whatever reason you can't get that job as a cop or an FBI agent, but you still need to feed your family, or at least feed yourself, there does get to be a slightly more moral gray area that you can find in that story.
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
that's my opinion. I don't know. But this I kind of feel like this is the damaged people's episode where we get our backstory about Amy. We get a lot of nice flashbacks with Billy. We get Billy at the Little League Park with Frank, and basically saying, part of me really wants to go and kill this guy. And then what I love about how that story goes is that, again, Madani is thinking this is all premeditated.
Right.
But when we get there, we realize, when we see Billy in that moment, it's not premeditated.
Nope.
It's like, this is my home. And honestly, he probably could have sat there, had a beer with the guy, and, it would have been fine if the guy didn't push it.
Right.
Like, had the guy just, oh, Billy, but the guy is all angry at, being told that, oh, I'm not allowed to have sex with little kids anymore.
Yeah.
And they took my pension for that,
And I think he thought this was the end. So it was kind of like that belligerent person that meeks his maker and says, no, screw you. You won't get me to bend to, whatever.
Yeah.
So it was like he knew he was going to die, so he wasn't going to die, cowering down. He was going to vehemently and rebelliously say, I don't care what you think. I did what I did,
Oh, okay. I actually just thought he was being a jerk, but okay.
That's how I said, because that's the only reason, because he had no idea that Russo didn't remember their things. He thought he was there simply because of what happened between them.
Oh, really? Because when he makes the statement, oh, you're back here because you're not so pretty no more, I kind of thought that was him saying, you're just crawling back to me because now you're a homeless derelict.
No, because they said, remember when you tried to come at me with this stick before? Like, when I wanted to rape you and you weren't about it, we had a scuffle. I remember I beat you up then. If that's what you want, I'll do it to you again, kind of.
Yeah, which is a lot of old guy bluster. That
Right.
And then, we see how it ends, and, sticks are used, and penetration is achieved.
Oof.
Yeah. That was, they do not pull punches on Netflix, man.
No.
Enjoy it, Hulu. This is all yours now. But and then we do get our Detective Sergeant Britt Mahoney back. Mahoney, good old Mahoney.
Mahoney, right?
Yeah, Mahoney and our friend Dinah Madani having their conversation on this. And I gotta tell you, man, I really feel like Madani, she has a few neurons misfiring.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I think that because she constantly has like this deer in headlights look this season, which testament to her as an actress,
right.
But I do think that she is working through the same kind of trauma that Billy is, but because Billy has been getting help, I think Billy's dealing with it.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, that I think is a really,
like the therapy that she went through the FBI was probably the same therapy that Poindexter received. Hey, you doing good? You all right? Just say you're good. Sign this form. We're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. And Madani's also being coddled by her supervisor, who's sort of like, let's move on. Let's just move on, but not giving her any kind of repercussions. Really, Mahoney's the only person giving her repercussions. Right. And even Mahoney, waited till the last minute to actually ban her. Really, she should have been banned 6 months ago.
What I thought was interesting, though, is she finally asserts herself and says, hey, look, you're my underling. You want to come at me? See how that goes. I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah. Even though she's crazy and, dealing with some stuff. But I thought, why is this, not a beat cop, but, underling talking to you that way?
Well, first off, he's not an underling. He's a detective sergeant in the NYPD. He is in no way under the authority.
Not under her authority, but he doesn't. He's below her pay grade.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, really, that's sort of the thing of it is not necessarily. I mean, he's blue collar, and we clearly are seeing. Not for nothing. If there's something to make you get angry at the federal government for, it is the nice restaurants that all these FBI people are eating. It's like, really? They're going to these places with these big martini glasses? I don't get those big martini glasses, and I go to TGI Fridays. Um, there is clearly an implication in that there is a little bit of largesse there, but that is perhaps unearned because and again, this goes to this very blue collar working aesthetic that Netflix is tapping into in their superhero dramas of even when they are rubbing elbows with that elite world of New York City, they are still very much rooted in people who aren't quite of that world. They maybe get to rub those elbows, but they're not really of that world. Although Madani very much is of that world, as we see from her mom's apartment. I don't know if we've met her father yet, but her mom definitely is doing very well for herself, and really being a cop is sort of a step down in their family thoughts of things. It's like, oh, you are a police officer. No, I'm Homeland Security. But really, her trying to pull rank on Mahoney is really just like, no, you're a cop just like me.
Interesting.
And don't act like, like you may have a lot more pull than I do because you're more tied into this power structure, but you don't have the moral authority to tell me you're the boss of me. That's how I read that. But, there's lots of ways to read it.
Indeed.
Oh, okay. Anything else to talk about this episode, Mozzie?
No, I think we got it all.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, these episodes continue to be fantastic.
Yeah, the relationship between Rachel and Frank, I think that's important to mention. There's a couple of scenes that I found very interesting. Like, she comes into the room, she locks the door, and for a moment, she feels like she has a moment to herself and lays down in the bed. And even then, she's not comfortable and like goes underneath the bed to feel completely encapsulated and alone, to be herself, and where she sort of breaks down, which to me, all those previous scenes where she was so tough makes her even more tough in that sense, which I thought was kind of cool.
I mean, that is fantastic how they framed that scene, how they framed that idea. And of course, it goes back to her hiding under the bed, and that's why she survived.
Yeah.
That it becomes this, and also, if you want an interesting aspect of it, makes this greater terror for her when she was tied to the bed. Because you don't even maybe think about that. Like, oh man, that is like, had she been on the bed, she would be dead, and she knows people are coming for her, and now she's tied to the top of the bed, and the one place that she knows she was safe was underneath the bed.
And what's interesting is Frank doesn't go after her; he waits for her. Why do you think that was?
Well, because at the end of the day, Frank is, Frank is old-fashioned. I think Frank does recognize, this is, and again, about the lines that Frank draws. He is a hero. He wants to protect this girl because he couldn't protect people he loved. Right. And this is a vulnerable person that he can protect. And he wants to show that respect. He wants to show that he does understand things deeper than Russo or Pilgrim.
Right.
That as much as everyone wants to say, oh, he's just a killer who attacks, bad guys, and he doesn't consider the deeper confluences of these people's lives. In fact, he actually does do that, and he does see these people as people in a way that, maybe people don't give him credit for.
Right. Also, I figured he had to have thought just how people work through problems or questions. If you give them time alone to think of it on their own, they'll realize that what I'm saying is the only way we can proceed.
Yeah. Anyway, it is all very fascinating, and honestly, I can't wait to get to the next episode.
Indeed.
I don't think I've watched the 5th episode yet. I think that I'm still kind of, I'm not up to speed as much as I'd like to be, but this is all very great and fascinating stuff, and it keeps on getting better, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Mozz, if people would like to reach out to you and talk to you about where it's all going or where it's been, how can they find you?
Well, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's Mozzmanzor.
And of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Possible instead at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Possible instead, which I just already told you, so don't worry about that. If you'd like to follow me on the Twitters, oh gods, I'm lost right
Bing!
now. Bing, that's the one. CHARLIEESSER. Look for the two E's in the middle for quality. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to us. But you may now go forth, for your sins have been absolved. But when you sin again, and you know you will, return here for your just punishments. Good night.